Good morning, Hillview. It's April 13th, and I'm going to start reading Chapter 9, Camouflage. Jack and Annie stepped lightly through dead leaves and pushed aside feathery weeds that towered above them. They carefully climbed over twigs, pebbles, and tangled roots. They skirted around a deserted ant hill as high as Jack's knees. When they got to the edge of the cobra's clearing, Jack stopped. He held up his hands and Annie nodded. They peered between tall blades of grass. The emerald rose glittered in the sunlight. It looked as big as a softball. The cobra was still coiled around her nest, but now she looked as big as a monster in a fairy tale. Whoa. What do you think we should do? Should I just run as fast as I can, grab it, and run back? No, said Jack. He was shocked by how big the cobra looked. I think she's asleep, said Annie. We can't really tell. Her eyes are hard to see because of her camouflage. So how? Started Annie. That's it, said Jack. Camouflage. What about it? That's how we'll get the emerald, said Jack. We'll use our own camouflage. You mean like leaves, said Annie. Yeah, leaves would be good, said Jack. They looked around. There. He pointed to a vine with large light green leaves. He and Annie gripped one of the leaves and pulled until it tore off the vine. Annie held it up in front of her like a shield. How's this? She said. Great, said Jack. Now, one for me. He and Annie gripped another leaf and pulled until they ripped it from the vine, too. Poke holes in them so we can see, said Annie. Good idea, said Jack. They poked holes in their leaves and then held them up, covering their faces. Jack moved his leaf around until he could see the emerald through the eye holes. Go slowly and stick with me. 2 steps, then stop. 2 steps, then stop. Got it, said Annie. Holding their leaves in front of them, Jack and Annie carefully stepped into the clearing. They took 2 steps towards the emerald, then stopped. 2 steps, then stopped. The cobra didn't move. Jack desperately hoped she was asleep. He and Annie took 2 more steps, then stopped. The emerald glittered in the hot sunlight. They took 2 more steps, then Annie gasped. The cobra was lifting her body above her nest. Her head was broad and flat. She swayed back and forth, looked around with staring eyes. Jack and Annie froze, then slowly the cobra lowered her head. Jack let out his breath. Their camouflage had worked. He motioned to Annie, and they both took another 2 steps, then stopped. Jack was only a step away from the jewel now. Holding up his leaf camouflage with one hand, he leaned over and scooped up the emerald. It felt as heavy as a big rock. Holding the leaf with one hand, Jack used his other hand to shove the emerald into his bag. With Annie behind him, he stepped backwards 2 steps, then stopped. Jack kept his eye on the cobra coiled around her nest. He and Annie kept backing up. Suddenly, a sound came from behind them. A strange, hissing, growling sound. A chill went through Jack. He turned around. A monster-sized cobra towered over them. "The dad!" yelled Annie. It's a pretty big cobra since they're little. The male cobra had the same coloring as the female. His hood was spread out as he raised himself high above the grass. He swayed from side to side, staring down at Jack and Annie with cold, unblinking eyes. He opened his giant mouth, showing 2 deadly fangs. "Ah!" said Jack and Annie. They dropped their leaves and crouched down, hiding themselves in the grass. "Go, go!" sputtered Jack. They took off, scrambling through the undergrowth of the forest. Jack led the way as they both half crawled, half ran over the dirt and through the grass. Jack lost his slippers and ripped his coat. Like a mouse, he clambered over sticks and twigs, nuts, seeds, bark, feathers, mosses, and mushrooms. All kinds of ants and beetles scuttled out of the way. The air was filled with screeching insect sounds. Jack had no idea where he was running, but he knew he couldn't stop. He was sure the cobra was slithering after them, thrashing through the underground. Maybe both king cobras were searching for them now, he thought, and all the forest was screaming about it. Jack stumbled over a stick. He scrambled up from the dirt and looked around wildly. Where was Annie? He didn't see her. Had she gone off in another direction? Where were the cobras? Had they chased after Annie instead of him? Jack panicked. "Annie!" he shouted. The ground trembled. Jack heard thumping, thrashing, and bells. He crouched down to the grass and covered his head. He heard Annie shout, "Jack! Where are you? Jack!" She sounded as if she was up in the tree. "What's going on?" Jack looked up. Suddenly a gigantic snake dropped down in front of him. "Ah!" Jack yelled. "Yay!" Annie yelled from overhead. The snake didn't have the olive-brown skin of a cobra. It was gray and wrinkled. It wasn't a snake at all. It was the trunk of an elephant. Before Jack could think, the tip of the elephant's trunk curled around him. Clutching him like a banana, Morning Breeze lifted Jack up in the air. Jack clung to his bag so he wouldn't lose the emerald again. The trunk curled back, and Jack could see the sky whirling above him. The elephant uncoiled her trunk and let go of Jack. He plopped down into the straw carriage. Annie was already there. "Morning Breeze," Annie cried. "She came back for us." Jack was so small he couldn't see over the sides of the carriage. He tried to stand up to look for the cobras, but just then Morning Breeze bellowed and bolted through the forest. Jack lost his balance and fell backwards. Jack and Annie both laughed as they bounced around in the basket on the back of the elephant. They were safe from the cobras. They had their emerald rose, and Morning Breeze had risked her life to save them. Shh! Chapter 10. Caught in the Wild. Instantly, the straw carriage felt small and cramped. Jack and Annie sat up and looked at each other. "We're big again," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack, dazed. "Where's the emerald?" said Jack. Jack opened his bag. The jewel looked tiny again, but it was there. "No problem, I have it," he said. "It was kind of fun being so little, wasn't it?" said Annie. "Until we nearly got killed by a humongous, super poisonous snake," said Jack. "Thanks for saving us, Morning Breeze," called Annie. She reached out from the carriage and patted the elephant's wrinkled skin. "Yeah, thanks," said Jack. Morning Breeze made a trumpet sound and swayed from side to side as she tramped through the low, scraggling brush. "I wonder where she's going," said Jack. The elephant slowed down. She sniffed the air with the tip of her trunk. Then she stopped near a clump of bushes and made a low, purring sound. A snuffling noise came from behind the bushes. Branches and leaves shook and parted. "Oh, wow," breathed Annie. A baby elephant bumbled out into the open. He had a fuzzy head and bright shining eyes. Morning Breeze lowered herself onto her knees. She stretched out her trunk and stroked her baby. The little elephant nuzzled against her. "So that's why Morning Breeze had to escape the fort," said Annie. "When they captured her in the wild, they took her away from her baby. She was devastated. She was desperate to get back to him." "Yeah," said Jack, "and after she found him, she came back to help us." Annie climbed out of the straw carriage and carefully slid down off the elephant's back. Jack followed her. Annie patted the elephant's back. "I guess you'll be staying here now that you've found your baby." Jack rubbed his hand over Morning Breeze's skin. Her huge, wrinkled body smelled of grass and heat and trees. The elephant actually looked as if she was smiling. "I don't think you need to wear this stuff anymore," said Annie. She reached up and lifted the rope of silver bells off the elephant's neck. The bells jangled as Annie dropped them into the grass. "Or this," said Jack. He took the fringed cloth off the elephant's head. "And especially this," said Annie. Together, she and Jack unbuckled the strap that held the straw. Together, she and Jack unbuckled the strap that held the straw carriage in place on Morning Breeze's back. They pulled the carriage off and set it on the grass. "Doesn't that feel better?" said Jack. Morning Breeze stared at Jack and Annie. Her eyes were bright and clear. She trumpeted and rose to her full height. "Before you go, can we pet your baby?" asked Annie. The elephant didn't seem to mind as Annie reached out and stroked the baby elephant. "Whoa," Annie breathed. "Pet him, Jack." Jack rubbed his hand slowly over the baby's head. The elephant's fuzzy hair felt coarse and tickly. Jack laughed. "Enjoy being home in the wild again," Annie said to Morning Breeze. "Jack and I have to go back to our home now." "Thanks, Morning Breeze," said Jack. "Good luck. We love you," said Annie. Morning Breeze flapped her ears and waved her trunk at them. Then she turned and lumbered off with her baby at her heels. The two of them kicked up grass and dirt as they disappeared into the brush. "Wow," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. Annie turned to Jack and laughed. "We look like we've been in a train wreck," she said. "No kidding," said Jack. They'd both lost their pointy shoes and their coats were torn and dirty. "At least we have our Emerald Rose," said Annie, "and Morning Breeze is back with her baby." "Mission done," said Jack. "So let's go back to the treehouse," said Annie. "Yeah," said Jack. He looked around, but where the heck are we? "I think the big field we came through is over there," said Annie, pointing. "I hear a lot of bug noises. Let's look." Jack and Annie headed for the field. Ow, ow! Weeds and rocks jabbed their bare feet. Jack just missed stepping on a large anthill. He and Annie picked their way through the scrubby forest until they came to the edge of the yellow field. The sounds of buzzing and chirping filled the air. The tall grasses rustled in the dry, hot wind. "That's it," said Jack. "So to get back to the treehouse, we cross the field, then go on the dirt path, then head back through the bazaar and down the road to the Red Fort. Got it?" "Got it," said Annie. "I just hope we don't get eaten alive by bugs," said Jack. "Or get heat stroke or clobbered by those angry guys in the bazaar, or—" "Enough. Stop," said Annie, grinning. "One thing at a time. Come on, don't be a chicken. The bugs are more afraid of us than we are of them. Run." Annie and Jack started running through the dry, dusty field. Their torn silk coats billowed behind them. Jack could feel grasshoppers and all sorts of buzzy and jumpy things bashing against him, but nothing really hurt. His feet crushed the dry, tough grass until he and Annie finally reached the dirt path. "Yes, we made it," Annie said, out of breath. "Oh, look!" Jack was burning up. He felt dizzy. "Phew! Look," Annie said again. She grabbed Jack and pointed to a farmer hauling hay. The farmer was talking to an imperial guard in a horse-drawn carriage. It was the same guard who had escorted them to the Great Mogul's balcony. The farmer pointed back at Jack and Annie. The guard turned and saw them. "Oh no, he must be searching for us," said Jack. "Hide." But it was too late. The guard had jumped out of the carriage. He was striding toward the edge of the field. "Stop, ambassadors from Frog Creek," he called. Jack held his breath as he and Annie waited for the guard. The guard looked about as he approached them. "Where is the elephant?" he asked. "She threw us off," said Annie. "Yeah, and then she ran away," said Jack. He pointed to the right, while Annie pointed to the left, but the guard didn't seem to care about the elephant, nor did he seem to care about their bare feet and torn coats. "You must come with me," he said gruffly. "Why?" asked Jack. The guard wrapped his hand around the hilt of his sword. "Because if you do not, you will be put in jail for the rest of your lives," he said. "Oh," said Jack. "Good reason."